What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Tuesday night live stream. And this is like an ongoing documentation of my battle with StreamYard. Um, I added a new feature in there that allows me to have my show notes on the screen, but it won't copy the show notes from the source that I have them on. It'll copy it from every other place. And so I've been fooling with this thing for the last 10 minutes. Also, I'm playing around with cameras and camera angles until I find one that I like and one that works on the algorithm for me. And so this is my newest camera angle. Hope you enjoy. So tonight's live stream, and there's a big, huge elephant in the room, and it stinks. And that's, I mean, whenever we have a major news event, a catastrophic news event, or something that dominates the news cycle, I really do expect that that's going to be the hot topic on everybody's mind. I'm kind of torn on how I want to approach this thing because we're seeing like OJ trial level reprisal, like where you're seeing people getting fired. Like I remember when the OJ verdict dropped, there was a segment of people in power who were absolutely hell bent on punishing anybody that they thought might be pro OJ, and they unilaterally went through and fired people. And it disproportionately affected black people. Like there's a lot of black people that got fired behind the OJ verdict as retribution. This country's history is steeped in racial retribution. If you are a black person and you say the wrong thing in a public venue, and I'm not talking about saying stupid bullshit. I'm just talking about in general, like a general disagreement with a person in a public venue, you risk having your livelihood taken away from you. It doesn't even have to be anything controversial. All you gotta do is just piss off the right person in power, and the retribution is swift. Now, back in the days, the retribution would take on a violent tone. And so you had to be very careful as a black person where your words could actually get you hurt in real life. And I don't I don't necessarily think that we're completely beyond that in the world that we live in. But that's why I'm saying I do have some very strong opinions regarding this. Um, and the thing I do want to preface all of this by saying is um, that man should have been able to go home to his kids. Like at the end of the day, we'll throw that out there. But and I hate to say the but because this is negation, right? But here's what we're up against. We have a country that is teeming and boiling over um, with political violence and hatred. And a lot of times when we discuss the nature of political violence, we always put it in the frame of, well, words should be apart from actions and deeds and all this other stuff. I'm here to tell you that depending on what world you live in or where you come from, there's a real possibility that you've probably seen how fast words can turn into violence. Um, and it's not a new phenomenon. It's not a social media age phenomenon. This has been inciting words have been in existence for a long time. Like I said, I'm trying to preface this, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to approach the topic at hand. Um, because there's a couple of different things we need to talk about. And Fearless and I actually discussed. I can never say the word. I know it's either stochastic. I think it's stochastic terrorism. Um, where is terrorism inciting violence towards a group without necessarily having direct calls to action for them. There's a couple of things I'm tiptoeing around. One, I used to write for my website. It was called Long Boxing While Black, and my magnum opus was going to be Turning Point USA. Like this was back in the days. I was talking about the ascension of I was fascinated by the ascension of these right-wing talking points that were being featured in Prager University ads and stuff like that. And so I started tracking this. I had been following a lot of the stuff around Gamergate and a couple of other related but unrelated, but still related kind of things, and watching the rise of the online right, um, which was kind of a newish movement. And I was tracking a lot of this stuff. I was tracking the movements of a young Charlie Kirk and a young Ben Shapiro and all those guys as they were in their ascension on the internet. And I had just written an article. Like my plan was to take Long Boxing While Black, this comic book site that I had created, where I just talk about comic books from my perspective as a Black nerd, right? Like that's all I really wanted to do. And I was trying to dust off some of my old journalism stuff because I got 4 years of journalism school. Like I went to school for that. I went to college for that. I had 4 years of it, and I had to stop. I had to drop out of school to go work. I mean, that's just kind of how things worked out. But I had 4 years of journalism. And so this was going to be kind of my re-entry into kind of the independent journalism. So I had all my research, all my notes, notebooks. And there was a couple of online movements that I was documenting. I was documenting the FBA fundamental, what turned into the ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, Fundamental Black Americans. I was kind of following that. I was following the rise of what turned into the alt-right, but now it's just mainstream right-wing thought, apparently. And so I've been documenting. So I'm saying all that to say this. This is something that I had followed for a long time. And just because I stopped writing about it, because there was a couple of specific inciting events that made me stop writing. One of them was this really hard knee-jerk reaction to an article I wrote about Black characters in comic books. Comic books in the age of Black Lives Matter. It was really not that deep. Like seriously, it wasn't that deep. And I was talking about how do we broach what's going on in the country and apply it to what's happening in comic books. Specifically, we're talking about Black characters. And there have been a couple of other articles that have gotten some negative reactions, specifically me talking about, the lack of a Black community in the big two, like in Marvel and DC, the big two. I didn't go into Image or whatnot because I can't really lump Image in because Image is creator sponsored, and so there is no one editorial mandate that's shaping the entire Image universe, right? Marvel and DC kind of fall into that line because there's one editorial voice that kind of shapes what happens in those comics. I'm really far off my outline, if you can't tell. But so long story short, I was kind of bemoaning like the reason why a lot of the Black characters and their interactions didn't necessarily feel authentic was because we see these Black characters interacting with one another, and we normally know that Black folk tend to be in community with one another when we aren't really represented in spaces. And so yes, there is going to be a Black superhero community, especially if we're going for reality. There's going to be a Black superhero community. Even in a fictional world, like that's just the nature of us. We rally and build community around, especially when we are the out group in an environment. We tend to gravitate towards other Black folks so that we can feel some era of familiarity and not feeling like we are just alone in it. And so, yes, in the Marvel universe, there should be a Black community. And one of the things that was dope, I think it was Hudlin who wrote the marriage of Black Panther and Storm, which I wasn't a huge fan of how they did it, but I understand the concept. And it kind of ties into, the Captain America Red, White, and Black, or the Untold Truth or whatnot, where we discovered that there were multiple Black Captain Americas who have been experimented on by the American government. And I forgot which one who was the guest of honor at Black Panther and Storm's wedding. There was a little dope moment where all the black heroes revered the black Captain America, and the white heroes who were there didn't have any clue who he was, which so often happens with our pop culture icons and our heroes, where they were revered in the hood, and people outside of it really don't get the references. We go all day, and I could sit here and make movie references, music references, TV show references. For black people of a certain age, people are going to know exactly what I'm talking about, and very few white people of my age are going to have any clue what I'm talking about. That's just how it goes. And so that's the nature of pop culture in a pluralistic society, right? Like, people's pop culture experience is going to be different, but the marginalized group also has to consume the main group's pop culture. And so, and I'm speaking very plainly, like, even when I in Omaha, yeah, we had our hip hop scene and everything. We didn't have a hip hop radio station when I was growing up in the 90s. Like, it was Sweet 98. And that's where you got your hip hop. And really, the only time you ever really heard hip hop on Sweet 98 is, one, if the song was a Billboard Top 40 hit, or two, there's a little syndicated show. Sorry, my glasses will not get this much off of them. There was a syndicated show that used to come on Saturday nights, which was a hip hop show, and they would play hip hop. And so that's where you got it from. I had to listen to the same radio the white kids listen to. I watched a lot of the shows the white kids watched, just as a function of being a black person and watching TV. Like, Thursday nights were ours. The Fox Thursday night was elite. Fox Thursday night was elite. If you don't know, like, that's Martin, that's Living Single, and Living Color. Depends on who was running it or what was going on, but that was kind of our, and then New York Undercover, and that was kind of our unique cultural thing. NBC's Thursday night was elite for black folks of a certain age. You had the Cosby Show. I know his name is Dirt now, but back in the days, at the Cosby Show, and then It's a Different World. And there's very specific moments on It's a Different World that were cultural signposts for black folks. And I guess Marissa Tomei, because she was involved in it too, so she would understand a lot of those references because she was on the show. But Dwayne Wade's marriage, Whitley, and Dwayne, basically crashing Whitley's wedding. That was a cultural moment that we talked about the next day at school. And it wasn't just confined to Thursdays. Like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that when they debuted a new video, like, for Summertime, that was the buzz of the playground. When they played Summertime after the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that week, we talked about it a lot. When I'm trying to run it down, Michael Jackson would debut his videos around the Cosby Show, because that was the most watched show in America. We watch it there. I know he debuted a video on Fox, if I'm not mistaken, during In Living Color. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a big cultural signpost. So, but at the same time, we growing up in the 90s and stuff, black folks my age, the baby Gen Xers drifting into the millennials, we had our very cultural significant things. Now, I'm kind of far afield of what I'm talking about, but the conversation is, there's going to be a black community where there's any population of black people who are within the proximity of a larger group of non-black people. Like, we're going to rally around each other. And so that was the article. Like, where's the black community? How does this work? How are we going to represent the black community in these comic books? And then talking about all the stuff that's going on in the streets and all this other stuff. Got a huge negative backlash. Like, I was getting death threats, people threatening to dox my house, my family, threatening to dox the kids, dox my wife. And it was all really benign kind of content. Just talking about black folks in comic books. People lost their minds. And so I had to make a decision. And at that point, I shut down a lot of the writing output that I was doing, for that site. And what got torpedoed along the lines was also that rise of the online right wing culture that basically took over our political system right now. There, I had to shelve that because I'm like, if people were losing their minds behind me just talking about comic books, they're losing their minds to the point where I have to send this man death threats because his viewpoint on black representation in comic books doesn't align with mine. So death threats it is. What are these people going to do when I start talking the politics stuff? And so I buried that story. So I'm saying all that to say this. I'm kind of setting the table for this. What happened last week was unfortunate. It was unnecessary, and it was 100% predictable. Not the specific person, but something on that stage something on a political stage was going to happen. Because we're talking about the nature of political violence. So that's what it is. And so that's my prefacing. Again, I can't reiterate enough. And I know there's always going to be somebody that's going to take it out of context. So I'm saying this. I'm not endorsing anything. The only group of people that I would endorse for that kind of thing to happen would be like pedos, like child molesters and stuff like that. That's where my line is drawn, and my compassion erodes completely and totally. But the stage had been set for this for a long time. We're talking about the mainstreaming of actual hate speech. And it's something that, people don't really want to call it what it is. Okay. We don't want to necessarily give voice to what the nature of what actual hate speech is. It's not just slurs. It's not just slurs. And I think sometimes people think that political speech is necessarily like if you're railing against a specific party or whatnot, you're practicing hate speech, and that's not what it is. I'm thinking that we're talking critique of politics. I think when you start calling for acts of violence based on people based on their political affiliation, now we're crossing over into kind of hate speech. We're segmenting out a group of people, and this is my own definition. I know that there's probably legal frameworks around the definition, and I'm not getting into that. But the common understanding of hate speech is speech that incites hatred of a specific group of people who have traits that are kind of immutable. Like you can't just shake the traits. You can't just drop them. Like I can't just peel off my skin and be a white person. Like, right. Like, so I can be a target of hate speech as a black person because I can't change the color of my skin. Can't change, there are aspects of me that can't change or immutable. So we've normalized hate speech in this country to the point, and oh boy, wasn't the first one. Like Rush Limbaugh built an entire career off of really being vile and racist to black folks. Narrowly vile and racist to black folks. Tommy Loren kind of did the same thing. Trying to think of what other Bill O'Reilly. These people cultivated audiences based on not just black folks, but specifically black folks to a degree. Where we became the punchline or the person to blame for whatever ailments or social ills that they had issues with. And so Charlie wasn't really unique in that aspect because it had been proven that if you want to build a right-wing platform, all you got to do is just find a platform that will allow you to say incredibly incendiary things about Black folks, and you're going to find an audience. I know I have people on my Facebook friends list that are huge fans of the guy, or were huge fans of him. Here's what I'll say before I get into the actual what I'm going to talk about tonight. Nobody is seeing Mr. Rogers' legacy as controversial, right? He lived his life in a way where his legacy isn't considered divisive on any front. Betty White did the same thing. LeVar Burton's out there doing it right now, where nobody is seeing their legacy as divisive because they don't use their platform to narrowly attack a specific group of people or specific groups of people. So when you're sitting there asking me questions about, is this person where are they, right? Let's look at the totality of their work. And I'll ask you, if you into hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of Mr. Kirk's stuff, as I have, because I've listened to more of it than most of the people that are arguing with me. Because that's an old thing I get from being a journalism student. I intentionally seek out alternate lines of thinking and people that think differently than I do. And sometimes it actually causes me mental pain to actually have to sit there and listen to somebody that I so vehemently disagree with, but I do it anyway. Because I'm a masochist, I guess. I don't know what that is. If you could sit down and listen to as many hours of what that man was saying, are you left with the impression that he had a glowing opinion of Black people? And where do the lines merge? That's one. Two, we talk about legacy, blah, blah, blah. His legacy for me was kind of documented. I've talked to Black folks that aren't really too familiar with this body of work, and they know him because they see him as a racist person. Now, there was always going to be some subgroup of Black folks that will go against what. Let me pull up my comments because I've been missing comments the last couple of weeks. There's always going to be a subgroup of Black people that will align themselves with the other side. That's nothing new. One of the things that, and I kind of had to check myself a little bit because I know I've done a live stream about Black conservatives. But one of the things that, and I don't think was it FD. I don't know who said it, but they're kind of talking about Black conservatives and whatnot. And here's the thing: as a political movement, you're talking about a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup of Black folks. Statistically, electoral wise, even if we're going by polls, you're talking about 10% of Black people. And we're acting like the 10% of Black people represent 50% of Black political thinking. And so I don't want to get too far into it. But yes, there's always going to be a handful of people. There's a handful of Black Rush Limbaugh fans. They tend to either ignore or embrace some of the more vile sentiments he has about Black people because they hold them themselves. And I don't know, I'm not getting into psychology of it. I don't necessarily know if it's a self-hatred kind of thing, or an internalized racism thing. I'm not in their mind. But I will say this: you're going to find people that are going to defend him. You're going to find Black folks that defend him. That's cool. Stay on your side of the street or get your own platform and talk about it. I really don't care. If I'm engaging with you and saying, hey, this person's racist, the thing that I don't necessarily need the energy is where you say, well, he's not racist. Here's my Black friend to argue with me. Now, you two Negroes fight it out. This Black person's opinion is going to negate yours. And as a result, nobody's opinion matters. That's not the way to go. If you're not going to engage me, that's fine. I don't really care. Don't bring out my agreeable black friend, because that doesn't work for me. And all you're going to do is end up getting your agreeable friend's going to be pissed off at me, and that doesn't necessarily serve either one of us. Anyway, nobody ever questions like the legacy of people who don't go out, who go out and preach who teach love and preach looking out for one another, and not separating on those ideological or political fault lines. um, that's not a complicated legacy to leave behind. We start getting complicated legacies when somebody is incendiary and people are fully aware of their incendiary, but they agree with them. And so, regarding that, if you say, well, he's not racist, okay, fine. I don't believe you. And that means that I think that you align with what he says. And so my question to you is, so what parts do you agree with? We can look at the totality of the work that he left behind. And you make the call. I've listened to, when I say hundreds of hours, I've listened to hundreds of hours. I've read transcripts of a lot of his stuff. I've listened to hundreds of hours. I listened to sound bites, sound clips, and stuff in context, out of context, all that stuff. And I formed my opinion based on that. Now, getting into this, I want to start and kind of tell you a story about a guy. And unfortunately, my show notes won't populate on my screen, so I'm gonna be jumping back and forth. So if I lose one of you, if I lose y'all, understand this, because I have to jump between screens here. So we're gonna talk about a story about a guy. He was brilliant, but he looked out on the world and he was dissatisfied with the world that looked back at him. He wanted to alter the world and leave his indelible mark on that world. That's a lot of us are driven to do. Like, that's a basic human need. You want to leave your mark on the world. Some of us want to change it for the better. Some of us want to change it for our own needs. I'll let you decide which one this person is as I get into the story. The way this person wanted to change the world is they wanted to harness very primal elements, organic matter, things like that, things that exist naturally in the environment. He believed he can control primal stuff, life and death. In this case, it was anger, resentment, tribalism. And he thought that that was his way to relative immortality. That was the legacy that he was going to leave behind. So he stitched together this thing, this imitation of life. He stitched it together. All the grotesque, ugly parts of him, he made them work kind of in unison, and was able to create a thing. And then he breathed life into it, and it rose. And then for a moment, he felt the pride, and then he realized it wasn't noble. He created a monster. The nature of the thing. It was an intelligent thing, but it was a miserable thing. The thing knew that it really probably shouldn't exist. The thing craved belonging, but only found it with other monstrous things, other ugly things. And so when it looked around at the things that it got along with, it was other ugliness. And what happened was, when the thing found other things that were a similar mind frame, they didn't get along. They actually clashed. And that made it even worse. That made that sense of belonging, the thing that the thing that looked like it couldn't get along with. And as a result, it lashed out in all directions. It didn't discern between allies, enemies, friends, whoever stepped in the way of the thing got hurt by it and its existence, like a shambling, decaying imitation of life. And all it did was just hurt. It existed to hurt, because eventually anger is the only emotion it could feel. There's a proverb I've heard, black Southern proverb: every shut eye ain't sleep. Um, it's called don't. It's about basically not mistaking silence for safety, and not mistaking that somebody, not thinking that just because somebody's eyes are closed that they ain't paying attention to what's happening. And that's the nature of hate, right? Like, just because the hate isn't visible, it festers, it sits there, and it waits, and it prepares. It sets its stage. Um, the thing that was created wasn't just violent; it was manipulative. Um, it learned language, and it kind of reshaped perceptions around it. Um, okay, and if you guys haven't picked up on it, this is Frankenstein. Like, this is the story of Frankenstein. Um, and I used to talk about the Frankenstein monster that was unleashed when we, um, during the Obama years, um, when we had those people that were dressing up the Tea Party, when they was dressing up like, uh, um, what was it, the oatmeal guy, Quaker Oats guy, like they're dressing up like the Quaker Oats man, and demanding access, or demanding that they have their rights returned to them. They didn't really lose necessarily anything except their right to be governed by a white person. And so, and they lashed out incoherent blind rage. And don't let people tell you it was an incoherent blind rage, because I remember a couple months after Obama got elected, I ended up getting accidentally CC'd on emails at my job that had very, very racist caricatures of Obama with the bone through his nose. And he had literally just gotten in office. He hadn't even really done anything yet. The backlash stand was racist. And so it I listen. That was the Frankenstein monster that got unmoored, and it got loose, and kind of rampaged through the Republican Party, like, for a while. It destroyed the entire moderate wing, the compassionate conservatives, arm of the religious right got swallowed up by it, and a lot of more hardline right wingers attained their power during that time frame, and it kind of set the stage for the um, bad, like the bad guys in trading places kind of Republicans. Um, those guys went the way of the dodo, along with the conservative Democrats and the segregation era Democrats and the uh, the anti-segregation Republicans. Like, they all kind of went away and went their own way, and so the party got swallowed up, and it was destroyed by the same monster that it created with all the dark money. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. This is a Frankenstein monster of hatred that's rampaging through the country right now. And just because it's not visible at all times, a lot of this hatred happens in online spaces, and online platforms. Um, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it's not significant in any way, shape, or form. I'm abandoning the allegory because I think you guys kind of got the point. Um, One figure you guys need to be aware of is Nick Fuentes. That dude is actual neo-Nazi, like an actual, like, um, eight eight out of 10 neo-Nazi, to the point where he was kicked off of Twitter for being racist, reinstated by Elon, and then kicked off within a couple of days for being racist again. Yes, he's had Kanye on the show. That don't mean anything. Um, he says the hard R every chance that he gets. It's crazy. Um, he's out there, and he represents an arm, a wing of that space, of the right wing space. Because he's under the radar of a lot of people, they don't realize the influence that he has. Um, People don't understand the influence that he has with younger people, with younger men, younger white men specifically. There's some black men that fall into it. There's some brown skinned men that fall into it. Um, they don't know. They think that they're the exception to the rule in a lot of cases. He's out there. He represents the ideological fringe. And what's going to happen is, if we're not aware, if we don't address that level of hate that's out there, it's going to drift to the center, because that's the nature of it. It always does. It always finds a way to be the center part of it. um I'm not going to go too far into it, because that side of the right is super reactionary. Okay, the thing I'm going to say is this: when you start dealing in hate, the results are unpredictable, because it it metastasizes, it grows, and the people hurt by the hate aren't the people that you always intend to be injured by the hate. This is what happens with the normalization of hate speech. The table's been set for this. So as a country, we ask, what are we prepared to do about it? And it's not what are we prepared, what are y'all prepared to do about it? Because I've known that this thing has been cooking for a long time, and I don't necessarily have any power to stop the thing. Y'all voted for this. I didn't. Like, y'all voted, y'all went along with some of this stuff. We pretended like hate speech wasn't hate speech. We pretended like slurs against specific groups are just fine. We allow politicians to slur specific groups, and it gets blown off. This has been allowed, and it's normal. So at what point are we going to say, um, this is not acceptable anymore? Because I think, what's the window that we talk about? Um, the window of acceptable behavior. I think it's the window of tolerance, or it's not the window of acceptable behavior. Or what's politically acceptable? Overton window. The Overton window is kind of normalizing hate speech. So how far do you want to go with it? How far do you want to identify with it? And I think a lot of times, just because somebody politically agrees with you doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fight everybody to the ground on everything that they say all the time. I was one of the biggest critics of Obama. I was one of a big critic of Biden, a lot of Biden's agendas. I don't necessarily align with a politician in any way, shape, or form like that. But just because a person agrees with you doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that falls out of their skull. So the nature of hate speech is this: it sets the table. We're kind of living in this torrent, this ocean of it. Like I said, people are losing their livelihoods because they're like, hey man, I'm not gonna cry for this dude because he's racist. Oh, well, you must be rationalizing what happened. No, I'm just not necessarily, I'm not like breaking down, and like this isn't dominating my thoughts about it. No, you're fired now because you said. That's the point we're getting to. Okay. And all these people think they're above it, right? Like they think that they're above it. They think they could swim in the ocean of hatred, of building resentment towards people that are already marginalized by society, because it's lucrative. You can build a career out of it. You can make you can make multi-million dollars for it and set your family up forever with it. And up until now, there wasn't any counter to it. But now you have crazy people that will arm themselves and hurt you for it. Where does this end? Like, it's already happened on the left. Like, we've already had, well, not the left, we already had people on the Democratic side of the ticket get shot up and hurt and beat and almost killed for their political ideology. We had an assassination on attempt on Trump twice, and now finally one of the up and coming voices in that movement isn't here anymore to play with his kids. And the most we're getting is blind outrage, the desire to punish those that are questioning what's going on. It's not weird to y'all. Hey, we shouldn't dabble in hate. It can be dangerous. Fire that person, destroy them, destroy their livelihood, bankrupt them. It turns into fire brimstone. It's all about retribution. But again, it's an American sentiment, right? Like retribution, retaliatory violence, the desire to make you hurt because you wounded me emotionally or psychologically. I must make you hurt. Eye for an eye kind of stuff, right? Like that's kind of where that's where we devolved to. And so I guess I don't necessarily have a whole string of super coherent thoughts because there's nothing coherent about what's happening right now in our public discourse. We're cooked. Racism isn't a difference of opinion, y'all. And I got some of my people on my friends list that probably need to hear this. You quoting crime statistics and stuff at me when I am not only a father, I have no criminal record. I used to work to get people who did have criminal records, get them back into society, and try to prevent kids from entering the system. And you're quoting statistics at me like I have some control over what criminals do. That's always a wild thing. And it's meant to shut down discourse. It's meant to shame me into silence. We had it happen on the live stream earlier today with me and Fearless, where we're sitting there talking about, black stuff. And somebody jumps on and starts quoting the 13% stuff at us. And those that knows 13%, like, 13% of the population commits X amount of the crimes, blah, 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 blah. All right. Ignoring the fact that it's somewhere above 99% of black people aren't criminals. We're talking about a sub percent of a percent of black people that can be considered criminals. And we're highly arrested, but we're also the most exonerated group of people for criminal activity. And also being arrested isn't an indication of being guilty of a crime. I don't think I need to explain that to you. I don't know why I need to tell that to people. Just because you get arrested for something doesn't mean you committed a crime. Lots of people get arrested for things that they did not do and crimes that don't exist. I didn't want to talk about all this stuff tonight, y'all. But the media cycle demands it, and so we must feed the god of the media cycle. There's going to be another person that takes the mantle of leaning into, I hate this marginalized group because they're different. What I'm going to do is give subtext and not necessarily overtly say I hate them, but get my audience to feel a certain way about the people I'm talking about, because that's really what the game is, right? Like a tongue-in-cheek kind of hatred and racism, because there's plausible deniability. Stochastic terrorism. There's plausible deniability there. Okay. It's a shame that this is why we have to have this conversation. I can say this thing is awful. I can see the circumstances are awful, but I can also say I don't necessarily grieve people that have made their lights work to let me know that they don't like me. Some of y'all need to do better. Some of y'all need to stop bullshitting, like really, like bullshitting. I had to bring it to somebody earlier last week where I said, there ain't you got one black person on here that agrees with you. If you scroll through Facebook, you could see, if you scroll through your social media, you could see that a lot of black people are remaining silent, or some of them are like, I don't care. He didn't like me. He was racist. But they ignored that because in their media bubble, that didn't matter. So we don't advocate death or harm to people that disagree with us. But I don't necessarily love people who make a career out of hating me either. I ain't him. On to the next. All right. This is one I kind of threw in there because I think specifically, we live in a country that punishes. This is segment 2. This is about the poverty tax. Um, I promise we're going to get to comic books, y'all. Like, I want to get to comic books just so that I don't have to talk about all this heavy shit. But sometimes I need to include the heavy shit because I need to get it off my chest, right? Like, I need to get it. I need to get it out, right? That's what this is, a catharsis for me. You want your own catharsis? Download StreamYard, pay for the plan, use my referral link. To do it. Oh, by the way, while I'm out here pitching stuff, your boys, I'm on Patreon. I'm going to be starting my Patreon account here sooner rather than later. It's up and running. It's just a good way if you want to show some support. You like what I'm doing, show some support. I'm probably going to start putting my short stories on Patreon so you can kind of see what my writing tastes like. And so that's going to be something else. That's probably going to be the place where you see the full live streams because I'm not going to keep these public for that long. There's too much stuff that I feel like still needs to be ideas that aren't fully fleshed out and things like that. And so I'd rather, if I'm going to present this on a social media platform like a YouTube or something, I'd much rather have it in edited segments than just my uncut, unfiltered thoughts on things. Because sometimes, even when I'm talking to y'all, I'm still sorting through my thoughts and processing my thoughts on it. That's why I bring it up on the live stream. So you're gonna see those on the Patreon too. I'm looking at like $5. Like, just if you're interested in supporting your boy, you can. And I'll add different tiers. I'm trying to figure out. I keep joking about it, but I am trying to figure out how Discord works, so we can do Discord servers. I'm probably gonna start doing some exclusive live streams just for my patrons. But please come check me out there. I will put the link. I'll put the link once I get everything up and running. 100% running and where everything's all connected up and ready to go. But yeah, so you're going to see the raw uncut version of me. That's where you're going to have to come check me out, is on Patreon, or you're going to have to tune into the live stream on Tuesday nights. So, I think I will put the link here. Because I don't know if I'm published yet. I don't know if my Patreon's published, y'all. But I'm gonna put it in here just in case, because I work on getting it published over the next couple of days. But come check your boy out. If you want to show some support, that's where you're gonna find me. All right. Now, I do want to talk about the poverty tax. And I think it needs to be said, because I have some thoughts. They're not necessarily something you never heard before, but it's expensive being poor. And I think this country, we are primed to see poverty as a shortcoming. It's an observation I made years ago. When we ask how somebody's doing, it's always tied to their money. Health and money go hand in hand. That's how we phrase it. It's kind of a weird thing to me. It's always been a weird thing that health and money are so intertwined. But if you don't have money, you don't feel good in this country. We see poverty as this moral failing, something that somebody failed to do. They failed to win at the game of life. And so now this is the universe's wrath and punishment upon them. And that's a very insidious thing, especially as we're teetering on the brink of whatever chaos that's being engendered in the White House with our economy and whatnot. There's going to be a lot of people that are suddenly exposed to the poverty thing. Okay. So we're going to talk about there's hidden costs of being poor. It's cheaper to it's cheaper to buy things in bulk. Like, is that something as simple as that? It's cheaper to buy things in bulk than to piecemeal shopping orders. It costs you more when you're constantly having to buy bits and pieces of things. Um, stuff in the hood is more expensive a lot of times because there's price gouging and there's not a lot of mechanisms that actually are there to remedy that, because people know that some people have limited access to transportation, and so they're the only game in town, and so they can charge you whatever. Okay. Basics cost more because there's nowhere else for people to go. It's not an accident. This is profitable. Um, we did a thing in college where we tested store prices uh, from specific zip codes, and the zip codes where the most money was were typically less expensive for the same goods and services. That's not uniform, and it's definitely not a scientific measure, but that's what we found. Okay. Um, the idea of free checking, depending on where you're at. Some banks, sometimes there are banks in the hood, more times than not you got to deal with the check cashing place. Okay. You got to deal with those fees, overdraft fees, which is insane to me. So I'm getting penalized because I don't have enough money. I've literally ran into that as a business owner where something went wrong and I got hit with a raft of overdraft fees. So I'm getting billed for the money that I don't have. Banking when you don't have enough is constantly being exploited for fees. From a housing standpoint, rent to own appliances is dummy expensive. It's crazy expensive. I lived that life when I was a kid. My mom, we would get a new thing, a new appliance or something in the house, and we'd only have it for a little bit of time before it had to go back. I realized as I got older that that was just part of the game, and it was really expensive to have things. When I was case manager, I had to deal with slumlords and bad landlords all the time, gouging people because they know that they don't have any other options. And then security deposits damage on, like, for the most specious reasons. I've talked about food deserts, fast food sometimes actually being cheaper in terms of, because we're not talking about cheaper to buy, but we're talking about cheaper in terms of time savings, because you have to figure in that cost too. Um, Specifically, I've had a family where they had to take a bus for everywhere. Bus was their only form of transportation. And if you know how a bus system works, you have to really, really pre-plan your trips. Specifically in a city where bus transportation really is bad. Um, and so, yeah, a quick run to the store is a 2-hour trip. And then by the time you get home, it's almost bedtime for the kids, or it's just faster to just go to grab something at McDonald's and just throw it on the table and say, hey, dinner time, y'all. So there are different trade-offs that you make as a person that doesn't have resources. Um, it's more expensive being poor, is what I'm saying. And for whatever reason in this country, we've decided it's perfectly fine to punish people for poverty. Look at how our legislature handles programs for people who have less. There's always stripping of resources for people. Um, we're going to see nonprofits vanish overnight because of the political environment that we have set up for ourselves. And the problem is a lot of people who are middle class don't understand how close they are to poor. And then once you get there, you realize that there ain't no help coming for you. Okay. Um, I've dealt with this not having money, um, waiting to go to the doctor until I was until I had to go into the ER and having to deal with the fees of that. As soon as you walk in the door, they're starting to ring things up for you. Um, so there's a psychological toll that all that stuff takes. Okay. It sets your kids up to exist in survival mode all the time, where you're not able to see the forest for the trees and you're not able to pre-plan your money. Um, you don't have the mental energy to do things that may enrich you, or you may not even have the time to take that extra class or learn that new skill set that where you could go out and get a new job. Sometimes there ain't no new job. So there's so many different aspects of it. Um, a lot of the age cohort the age cohort that I was in would fall into Hillary Clinton's super predators generation. And so we really got shafted in terms of it, because not only we marginalized because we were the group that had been demonized on TV, they wanted to punish us unilaterally for the boogeyman that she had put on their screens and put in there to their minds and hearts. And so we really saw a lot of those resources. My specific generation of Black folks really saw a lot of those resources snatched away. And we just got used to paying for everything. Like I said, when you grow up in constant survival mode, it gets really hard to understand what abundance looks like. And even when you encounter abundance ain't going to be abundant for long, because you're not necessarily programmed to make abundance last. There's a tax when it comes to poverty, y'all. I've talked about the myth of bootstrapping. It's all bullshit. You're not supposed to be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's physically impossible. It's a sarcastic way of saying making something out of nothing. I don't know why that became the phrase for that, because it's sarcastic and it's mean-spirited. Okay. But here's the thing. To a degree, this thing ain't broken. It's the system is kind of working as it's intended to is designed. Like it's designed this way, because having a poor population of people is very, very lucrative for people that want to exploit that population of people. Don't ever forget that. All right. I'm done with depressing shit. I won't talk about it anymore. Well, I guess depending on how you look at things, comic books bring me joy. Nerd stuff brings me joy. This is one of the bleakest comic books that's out there, but you must read it. So I've been hyping up Absolute Batman. I'm going to give you a short recap without trying to get into too many spoilers. I'm assuming that you guys are familiar with some of the backstory. So there are mild spoilers in here. I'm not going to give too many aspects of like the Rogues Gallery completely away, but there's some very specific story beats that I will be talking about. So if you absolutely don't want to be completely spoiled on Absolute Batman 1 through 12, go ahead and log off now and go pick up the book and read it. That's all I can say, and get caught up, because we're gonna be talking about this for a minute. Scott Snyder is cooking. Absolutely cooking. So if we want to talk about the Absolute Universe, it's called Earth Alpha, if I'm not mistaken. Established in DC's All-In Special. Big brouhaha fight with between Darkseid and the Justice League. And in the defeat, it reshapes reality itself. Darkseid's essence becomes the seed of a new universe. And Earth Alpha is born from his design. It's a world of turmoil and strife and challenge. The heroes are essentially the thematic framing of it is the heroes aren't they are the bug in the machine in that universe. They are the chaos, because the status quo is bleak and subjugation and awful. And so the heroes represent the chaos, trying to upset the apple cart. Okay. The way they have it framed is they're not pillars of society. They're small chaos, disruptive sparks in a hostile system. That's kind of the theme of the Absolute Universe. Darkseid's trying to control the past and future at the same time, and consolidating the timeline into something grim, unstable, and unrelenting. He's basically turning the entire universe into apocalypse. We're going to talk about the Trinity here, because they pulled out vital parts, right? And so this is the spoiler piece of it, but everybody kind of knows this if you've been following along. If you're a nerd and been following along, they stripped out. Batman has no wealth. He's not a billionaire. He grew up middle class, and he didn't lose both of his parents. He lost one of them. Wonder Woman didn't grow up on Themyscira. She grew up in hell. She's still an Amazon. There's still a lot of those beats there, but she grew up apart from outside of Themyscira. And Superman, he did grow up with the Kents, but he grew up most of his childhood and adolescence was spent on Krypton with his parents. And so he didn't get the humanity aspect of it until he was an older teenager. Okay. The core personality traits and the central messages are still present, but it's adjusted for this world where the superheroes are the seed of chaos. They aren't the ones rescuing everybody. They are trying to rescue themselves against a machine that is absolutely brutal and unrelenting. Gotham City is kind of a character in absolute Batman in and of itself. Okay. So we get heroes that we do recognize, but there's kind of in different places. All the benefits that they grew up with or came to the table with are pulled away. And so we get to see how these heroes develop. Okay. Even Superman doesn't have the full access to his powers in this iteration of the absolute Superman. And I could go into Green Lantern and Flash and all that. They all follow the same kind of beats. Okay. So we're going to talk about Bruce Wayne in the absolute universe. He's 24 years old. He's a civil engineer by day, vigilante by night. He's an absolute unit. He is like 6'8", like 450 pounds. Like he is essentially a superhuman. Like if the dude that plays the Mountain, because I think he's about the same dimensions and everything, same proportions. If the dude that played the Mountain on Game of Thrones, the power lifter who set the world record for deadlift, and I can never whatever. That guy, he's Batman. The Mountain is Batman. No inherited fortune. He has to rely on his wits and intellect. He still has his intellect. He's still as smart. He's still a super genius. He just doesn't have the resources. And he has to rely on things that he's able to cobble together and piece together for himself, or stuff that he's able to steal. Because this Batman hasn't always been on the right side of the law. He's a petty thief to a degree. And all his friends are kind of in the hood. They kind of grow him up the same way, where they have some criminality tinged stuff, right? No inherited fortune. No Alfred. Alfred enters his life as an adult, and Alfred is, in this universe, is a spy master. He's Nick Fury. Alfred is Nick Fury. His rogues gallery are all of his friends that he grew up with. And so we're seeing the process. Like now we're in the process of fleshing out the rogues. And so you have Waylon Jones, who's Killer Croc, Harvey Dent, who's Two-Face, Edward Nygma, who is the Riddler, Oswald Cobblepot, Ozzy, the Penguin, and Selena Kyle, who's Catwoman. They're all friends that he grew up with. And they shared a tragic origin story that kind of brought them together as a friend group. Okay. They were survivors of a mass shooting that killed Bruce's dad. And it was a mass shooting at a zoo. All right. Arc 1, the zoo. This is 1 through 6. So the main villain in this story, we get introduced to the Joker, who is absolutely bone-chillingly terrifying, and you only get the chance to see him like 1 or 2 panels. Like you don't really see him a lot. But the villain of this is going to be the Black Mask. And they re-envision the Black Mask to be like this submission wrestling savant who kills people with grappling with them. Really, really terrifying individual. But it's kind of framing and setting the plate for what Gotham City is. Overrun with crime. There's a group called the Party Animals that's going around, and they're killing people for fun. and for their own entertainment. And absolutely, it's really it's really the Black Mass that is kind of pushing all of this. Like he's paying them and financing them to raise all kinds of terror and terrorize Gotham. Mayor Gordon is incapacitated. He's injured. Hamilton Hill, who takes over as mayor, is backed by the Black Mask. In issue 3, Black Mask offers Bruce a lot of money to step away. And that's the moral test. Because Bruce has the opportunity to become the millionaire, at least. And they really flesh out Bruce and Selina's relationship. Plus, they also flesh out this is a more violent Batman who will maim you. As long as you survive, you're gonna wish you died, but this Batman will absolutely maim you. And absolutely he will hurt you in ways that other Batman that was their level. Like they wouldn't go past. He will go past. He'll do everything short of killing you. This Batman. Like I said, he's 6'8", 400 pounds, martial artist. Like if he touches you, he's gonna hurt you. This is also the Batman with the battle axe, and he puts that battle axe to work. All right, Arc 2 is absolute zero. This is only a couple of issues. Arc M is revealed. You get a chance to see what the Arkham of this universe looks like. It is horrifying. Okay. Maximus Malone is introduced. He is a friend of Bruce that grew up with him. And he dies of mysterious circumstances. And so that opens up the arc. Bruce has got to figure out what's going on. The matches. Victor Freeze Jr. is introduced as Mr. Freeze. Very, very nightmare fuelish version of Mr. Freeze. And Bruce gets his ass kicked. He has to run. One of the subplots that got left off the outline is, I believe Victor Freeze made it snow in Gotham, and he had developed this snow so that they could identify people who had some latent genes that they were looking for to experiment on. That goes into the next issue, Abomination, and this is where things absolutely turn up. Okay? Absolutely turn up. Because this is where Bruce decides that he's going to infiltrate Arkham and stop everything. And stop everybody. We are introduced to Absolute Bane, who hands down is the best iteration of Bane that's ever existed. I don't care. Fight me on it. I don't care. This is the best that Bane's ever been. I don't care. Bane has never been a doper character. He absolutely stuns Bruce. Like, it's not even close. It was never a challenge. Bruce is never a challenge to him at any point. He's never a threat to him in any way, shape, or form through this arc. Bruce is never a threat to him at all. This is where Killer Croc, Waylon, gets introduced. Killer Croc gets kidnapped, and it's awful. And the Killer Croc of the Absolute Universe is one of the most terrifying things that I've ever laid eyes on in a comic book panel. When I'm talking about mainstream comic books, it will stick in your brain, and it's awesome and amazing, but it's terrifying. So in Abomination, Bruce pushes against, kidnaps, and frees his army. He's nearly overwhelmed. Issue 10, Fallout deepens. Gotham slipping further into chaos and horror. And Bruce is telling Bruce's story in Arkham and showing exactly how much of a fighter he actually is, despite the very, very substantial efforts to break him. And these are substantial efforts. These are terrifying efforts to break him. They tell Bane's origin story, which is incredible. It needs to be the default origin story of Bane. Like, this needs to be the main Bane. I also tell you, every bit of a unit that Batman is, Bane is like 3 times bigger than he is. And that's when he's not on the gas. When he's on that Venom, Bane is Bane. I don't know. A Herculoid Bane is the only thing. He's a Herculoid. Like, he turns into the rock dude from the Herculoids. Like, he is absolutely an absolute monster. can crush people with his bare hands kind of monster. He absolutely embarrasses Batman every time they fight. And um, Bruce finally does escape, but it's after he had been trapped in Arkham for all this time, and they actually experimented on him and did surgery on him and surgically modified him. They mention other people, like KG Beast and Deathstroke, and possibly Ra's al Ghul as other people who survived the treatment that Bruce and Bane had endured. And so we're setting the stage for them to come along. And with Killer Croc, Bruce manages to escape. But escape is a relative word because it lands him in a new kind of hell. Because we head into issue 12, which is the one that just dropped. I'm really going to be light on spoilers. It's really fucked up. Issue 12 is completely the most fucked up. One of the most fucked up things I've ever seen in a comic book. I am dead serious. And when I talk about how fucked up this comic book is, and it's not in a bad way. It's like a jarring kind of, oh my God, I can't believe they did that way. I haven't been this unsettled by a piece of media that I was consuming since I watched Optimus Prime die with my own eyes in the Transformer, the animated movie, at like 8 years old. Watching the Autobots get slaughtered was kind of the similar reaction. It was a visceral, like, oh my God. Now, that one reduced me to tears. This one was awesome because I was a little bit old. I'm older now. I can frame it. But my God, issue 12, we get Batman's rogues in a new way, and it's horrific. Prepare yourself. This comic is not for the faint of heart. And for even those that are used to violent comic books, you ain't seen nothing like this because Scott Snyder is in his horror bag right now. He's giving you horror in a Batman book. That's why that man they need to bring him in. I'm still pushing it. They need to bring Scott Snyder in. The streets need a Scott Snyder Hulk run. Do you hear me? The streets require this. Yeah, I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. You guys can't even see it. Like, you can't even see it. This is a picture of the Hulk. Like, this is my Hulk thing. Like, this is my Hulk thing. Sorry, y'all can't see it. Green screen and whatnot. This is actually a framed picture of the Hulk. We need a Scott Snyder Hulk run. Yeah, there we go. Scott Snyder Hulk run. Hulk. We need Scott Snyder writing this guy. Scott Snyder writing a monster story in Marvel will feed families. So anyway, Absolute Batman. I cannot recommend this enough. I have left out so much context, y'all. Please go pick this book up. Please go pick this book up. Gotham is really just a body horror. Like, the whole backdrop is body horror. Okay. But it's done in an interesting way. And I keep saying it, but it's grim. The story is grim and it's dark, but it's not hopeless. And I think that's the thread. It doesn't feel hopeless. You feel like somehow Batman's going to overcome this, even though he is facing like the one of the darkest episodes in his life right now. Go check it out. You got to go check it out. I mean, if you're into comics, if you've been lapsed, or if you're not even feeling Batman, go read Absolute Batman. It's a different take on the character. A really interesting one. I don't know how they're going to do Robin. I don't foresee them introducing a Robin into this world. Because I don't know what happens to that kid. I don't want to see what happens to that kid. If they introduce Robin in the Absolute Universe, I don't want to see what happens to that kid. Especially if it's a Jason Todd. Terrifying. We still haven't really seen the Joker. Like, we've seen him bits and pieces. The Joker is the man. He doesn't necessarily laugh, which is kind of off-putting. And Joker is the billionaire. So it's basically Joker has Bruce Wayne's wealth. And he utilizes it in a multitude of ways to get a multitude of things done. I think he is actually the big bad of that Batman's universe still. But he has the resources to absolutely shape the world in his will. It's him. And Superman, Vandal Savage. I don't know if he's completely the power behind the throne, um, but Vandal Savage is the big bad in that one. I don't know in Wonder Woman because I haven't been keeping up with Wonder Woman as much, so I need to go look and see who the big bad is. I'm imagining it's probably Ares again, and they probably have a dark and twisted version of Ares. So anyway, that's where it stands. We're at issue 12. The Absolute Universe is just is cooking on all cylinders. Um, is better than, and the only thing that's close to it from the major publishers right now is what's happening in the Ultimates version of Marvel, which is surprising because I've never really been a huge fan of the Ultimate Marvel universe, but the Ultimate Marvel universe is banging right now too. It's just not on the same level of what Scott Snyder's doing with the Absolute Universe. And Absolute Universe, I want it to stay around. I don't want it to go away. And I know it's going to go away. I know that it's going to not be a thing at some point in time in the future. But I'm holding out hope that they do merge the universes and give us a Batman with similar story beats. You know, maybe this is the way to bring back Alfred. And I'm not going to front. The new Batman is actually pretty dope too. Like I think Zdarsky is writing Batman in the main Marvel in the main DC universe, I should say. And I read that first issue. That first issue was really kind of an interesting take on Batman. I like it. It's not fucking with this absolute Batman, but it's really, really good. It's a good time to be a comic book fan, bro. Like the independents are killing it. The mainstream. If you're X-Men fan, it really kind of sucks because X-Men is outside of what Gail Simone's doing. X-Men is, I don't want to say doo-doo hot garbage, but it's not. The From the Ashes era has not been as successful as Marvel has hoped because it's a scattershot mess, and they had to cancel a bunch of books, and so now all the books that I done got invested in are ending abruptly and terribly on the X-Men side of things, while they set the stage for the Age of Revelation with um, Cypher being Apocalypse. I get it. I understand how they made Cypher Apocalypse because they gave him the power to basically um, because in the comic book Cypher can understand any language, whether it's written or nonverbal language or whatever. That's just his mutant power to decipher any language and learn it and be able to communicate with anybody essentially. They've augmented his power so that he can utilize his voice to persuade people to do anything. Basically, they made him the Purple Man. They made him the Purple Man. They made Cypher the Purple Man. Um, and now he's Apocalypse, essentially. And so they're doing the Age of Revelation, kind of like they did with the Age of Apocalypse. I don't know if it's going to save what they would. I think they really botched the post Krakoan era X-Men. I mean, I'm be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it being. I think that the post Krakoa era X-Men really hasn't really lived up to the hype. I think Gail Simone's book is good. The X-Men down in Louisiana. But even then, that it's had its stumbles, it's had its moments. And I think a lot of it had to do with more editorial stuff. Eve Ewing stuff was actually all right. But I think her stuff got compressed and it had to end abruptly. And so it wasn't like it started out promising and then turned pretty bad towards the end. I don't think it's any fault of her own because I think what happened is the book got canceled. They were building towards something, but I think overestimated the interest in a lot of the X-Men properties and decided to because people weren't necessarily happy about how the Krakoa era ended. Um, they decided that we're going to shotgun blast you with every single X-Men title, every single X book that's available. And I lived through that once already. That's not the key. That's not the way. Shotgun blasting people with too much X-Men will absolutely sour people on the product, and that's what happened in the 90s, and that's what's happening right now. So we need to figure out um, how we're going to fix what's happening with the mutants in Marvel, because that's the big disappointing thing. Krakoa was Krakoa, and they ended it kind of abruptly. They kind of rushed to the end of it, and then they rushed into this new era, and I think they ended up losing direction midway through because we had stories that didn't go anywhere, and thinks that it's just not going anywhere. It's like literally not going anywhere. So that's all I got. That's my take on it. If you're gonna pick up a book, pick up Absolute Batman. Absolute Batman is bananas. It's everything. I just can't say enough about it. So that's my recommendation. I'm gonna be talking about it a lot on this channel. So if you don't want to hear about Absolute Batman, then I guess I'm gonna just have to catch you somewhere else. Hopefully they can fix the X-Men problem. So anyway, I've been on this stream long enough. I do appreciate y'all's time. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch y'all later. Be easy. This is Brian with Blurting While Dead. I'll check you out. Check me out. Check your boy out on Patreon. I'm gonna be launching that here later on this week. Peace.